I think we're here.
I think we are.
Good morning to everyone that I cannot see from the Pacific Northwest in Whistler, Canada, where I, Jonathan Baruch, am in quarantine with my friend Noa Tishby, where we're having a conversation, or as I like to say, a fireside chat.
You took it literally. You took it to the extreme.
I did take it to the extreme.
Amazing.
But why not?
Why not?
So Noa Tishby is a thought leader when it comes to Israel. But for me, she's my friend. She's an incredible mom. She is a writer, an actor, a singer, basically a savant from where I come from, okay? And I am honored to welcome her on behalf of Israel 21C to this conversation today. I met Noa really in a crazy random way about 10 or 11 years ago in Israel. I was there with a group of people on a trip, and we went to this restaurant, and Noa happened to be there. I just started chatting with her. I didn't know who she was. Clearly, she had no clue who I was. But what we realized is we shared not only a passion for Israel, but what we realized is that the story had yet to be told in a way that was not about what we read in the papers, the New York Times, the Washington Post, or wherever you're going to read it, but really a place where we could learn about the people, the culture, the story, the truth. And that's what we're going to do here today. And Noa doesn't realize this, but because of that conversation, when we came back to the States and she and I met and talked about this, I was looking for my own way to have this story. And I found it through Israel 21C. And of course, she found it by deciding to write a best-selling book, which is what we're here to discuss today. So, welcome, Noa, today.
Thank you, Jonathan. So lovely. I feel like we are having a fireside conversation.
Fire's not burning so well over there.
Amongst our friends, and then we got, about 400 people kind of listening in. So,
it's
don't mind us.
Don't mind us. So, I'm going to give a little bio about, who you are, okay? And you'll tell me if what we have is correct or not. So, Noa was born and raised in Tel Aviv, and her great-grandfather, who was and when you read the book, you'll learn more about this if you haven't already, but established the Ministry of Industry and Trade in Jerusalem, and was a big influence on her life without her even knowing it. And then her other grandfather co-founded one of Israel's first kibbutz. She served 2 years in yes. Was your grandmother?
Yeah, my grandmother is from Ganya, from the first kibbutz in Israel.
Sorry, see, I've already been corrected. She served 2 years in the IDF as a singer in a military band. She had a drama scholarship at Tel Aviv National Museum of Arts, and she was a TV star in Israel in the 90s on a soap opera, Ramat Aviv Gimel. She, for some crazy reason, decided that she was going to come to the United States and had success in terms of being in multiple television shows, but where she really kind of did something that no one probably realizes. She sold In Treatment to HBO, the Emmy award-winning In Treatment, correct? And,
Emmy and Golden Globe and nominated and Peabody Award winning.
And by being done again this year.
Yeah.
But what Noa did is she brought an entire industry to the United States. So when you were watching everything from Shtisel to Fauda, you can thank my friend Noa Tishby, because that's who started this whole trend. And then she's founded her advocacy organization, Act for Israel. Here's the thing. I'm not to say certain words, but she's done a whole lot of stuff. And now what she's done, she's published her first book, Israel, A Simple Guide to the Most Understood Country on Earth.
Yes, most misunderstood.
Oh, what are you saying? The most understood? What are you talking about?
Oh, no, it's the most misunderstood. If it was understood, I wouldn't have had to write the book.
That's right. So that's a great thing. So Noa, why?
Why did I write the book?
Yeah, why did you write the book?
Because I needed it. It was a very selfish kind of act to do, really. No, it isn't. But, I identified a gap in the market because I've been either working in Israel advocacy on my own, right? Like doing speaking engagements or whatever, or finding myself over 1,000 dinner parties, being kind of like the go-to person that answers questions. So something would happen in Israel, people would be like, what just happened? What is this? What is that? And I would find myself explaining it over and over again. And then with my advocacy work with Act for Israel, and I kept getting asked over and over again, is there a book I can read? But like something that I can actually read, right? And there wasn't, meaning there are a ton of books about Israel, extraordinary books, but they're they're heavy reads. So professional historians would read them, and people who are like deep in the weeds of this topic would read them. I'm sure a lot of us have read them on the call. But if you wanted a book that you can give to like your best friend from college, or to your kids that's about to go to college, or to my liberal friends, a bunch of my liberal friends who are like in the arts and entertainment and entrepreneurship and finance or whatever, and they're not that interested in this topic, there wasn't a book that made it easy to understand, clear, relatable, fun, funny, quick, something that actually gives you the entire history, but making it in a way that's easy to understand. And I have been able to kind of decipher how to do that throughout talking to people. I was able to sit with somebody, and within 15 minutes, they'd be like, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, okay. I'm like, that needs to be in a book. So that's why I write it. At some point I kept looking for it, and I couldn't find it. And at some point I'm like, I'm just going to write this book that I know how to tell. So
yeah, let me tell you something. I have read the book, and it's again, as one of those people that has read pretty much as as you can read, what I appreciated about the book, was the stories about the people, and not just about the people, but about you as a person, and how you kind of lived in this country and how you saw it. And sure, we can talk, politics or blue in the face, but I don't want to do that today. I really want to focus on like, about these people and the country. So let's just talk a little about you. What was it like growing up in Israel in the 80s?
It was, it's interesting. It's one of those questions that you can only answer with time, right? You can only answer when you have a point of reference. Cause it's like, you'd ask me that, I'm like, I don't know, it was great. But it was really good. There's a sense of freedom for teens and kids in Israel that exists till today. That's like one of the main differences between growing up in America and growing up in Israel. Like I would walk to school in kindergarten. Like I remember vividly coming up to my mom one day, and I'm like, I'm done. I don't want you to walk me. And she kind of followed me. I remember the first few times. And then me and my girlfriend would walk to school and cross like, one little street, a parking lot, and go to school. And it's still the same. Like teens in Israel kind of take bikes and go everywhere. And if we live in a city in the United States, I'm not sure who's on this call from where in the US.
I think actually from all over the world. By the way, there are people today from all over the world. So
all over the world. Hi, world.
You've gone global, my friend.
We've gone global. So it was very, because it's so small and so familiar, it felt like a family. You kind of walk around, you think, and also it's like pre-cell phone days. It's like, no, come back for dinner. Like mom's screaming from like the balcony, everybody's mom. So it was really nice. And the sense of political awareness was something that wasn't like unique to my family. Although my family is like super political, as you can see in the book. I'm not super political, just politically involved in various ways. But it's something that you grow up living through. And as a teen, a young adult, you're having these conversations about politics, like it's not a big deal. And when I moved to the States and I would sit at a dinner party and be like, oh, did you hear what happened in like Congress yesterday? Oh, what do you think about this guy, that guy? I literally would have people be like, oh, can we not talk about politics? And I'm like, what else do you want to talk about? Like, why wouldn't you want to talk about what's happening in the world and in your governance system? That's obviously something that changed a little bit with age and with the circle of friends that I have now, that we're all like obsessed. But that was very different. That's something like you have political conversations in Israel at 14 years old. You sit with your friends and you shoot the shit, pardon my French, and you kind of talk about.
Was that what that ding was? Is that ding when you say a bad word? I just heard a ding. Or was that someone?
That's funny. Hang on. That's not that bad. I was like, yeah.
Para.
I'm doing my best tonight. I can cuss like a truck driver sometimes.
Yeah. By the way, I sadly, I've spent, or not sadly, happily, I've spent time with you, and yes, and we, we can, as we can have
That's again an Israeli thing too, because you can say the F word on TV and you're not going to get beeped.
right. No, I know. I mean,
it's a way more casual kind of society, as I'm sure a lot of us know, right? It's way more.
Yeah, and I think that I'm going to venture again. I don't like to make assumptions, but I think a lot of people here who are probably here, they are already fans of yours, and they're leaning into that great country. I want to kind of talk a little bit about your kind of journey in terms of from when you were young and acting. I mean, last time I checked, I don't see anyone else in your family that is up on stage singing, dancing, memorizing lines. I mean, maybe they're acting in the sense that they're acting on behalf of the state of Israel, and that is that's acting.
No. Oh my God.
How
By
does
the
that?
way, are you seeing the light? I've got skylight here, and like this is like becoming as if like I've got a halo, which I don't. So let me reposition my
No, by the way, I am up making a movie called, Highway to Heaven. So
there you go.
we'll get into what goes out later, because I'm gonna let people in on a little secret.
Yes. What's the secret?
I'm not gonna tell you now. They're gonna have to wait.
There's a secret?
There is a secret, but they have to read the book, but we'll get into that later. So let's talk about you acting. No one in your family is an actor.
No, nobody in my family is in the entertainment industry. And this happened. This was one of those things that is such a clear indication to this profession. It chooses you, you don't choose it. Meaning I was a kid in Israel in a family. My mom was an executive, a high ranking executive. My mom is amazing. I talk about her in the book all the time. I've got so many people now that are coming up to me in like talks and events and like just random emailing me and whatever going, oh my God, your mom is amazing. Like, I can't wait to meet your mom. And I'm like, I know, she's amazing. So so my mom was in marketing her entire life. My dad was an architect. Nobody in my family, nowhere is in the entertainment industry. And I vividly remember myself, like as a kid, watching kids on TV. We had this thing called a festival, which is like kids and adults were singing together or whatever. And I was looking at them and I'm like, I want to do that. Like I want to do that. I want to do that. And it was such an urge that, my mom, I would come up to my mom and was like, I want to sing, I want to dance, I want to act. And she's like, okay, well, when you grow up, you're old enough, you can do whatever you want. And I literally reached, I think, the age of 12 or 13. And I would take myself to auditions. There was a place called, this is a very tiny story, but there was a place called Nachlat Binyamin in Tel Aviv, which I'm sure some of us know, right? At the time they started this thing, and there was on Fridays afternoon, there was like this happening thing with like, stores and music and people, whatever. It was like a big thing in the 90s in Tel Aviv. And I would go there because there were casting directors that would go there to like scout. And I would literally go there knowing like maybe somebody will scout me. I mean, like that's how not connected I was to the Israeli entertainment industry. Like I didn't even have my family. We didn't even have one phone call that I can make to like a normal agent. Right. So I got like a crappy agent and started tagging myself on auditions and stuff like that. And it was one of those things, my family was just like looking at me in awe because I was a child and I'm like, I want to do this. Like I'm going to do this. And that's what I say.
Well, what year was that around? Because because it's interesting. There's something I want to bring up to people, but
it was in the 90s. I don't remember, but it was like, so I have a friend who has a beautiful daughter and she's like 11. She's super like driven, loves dancing and acting and singing and all that. And he's like, oh, should I talk to her about like giving her an agent? And I'm like, do not. She'll bring it up. Because the thing is that you prefer her being the most successful, the most beautiful like lawyer. Like you really don't want to push her into the entertainment industry because it's something that you just, in the entertainment industry, it's something that you have to be a part of if you literally cannot do anything else. Like that's the only option. So that's what it was. And I started doing commercials and like little roles here and there. And then I got on stage for the first time when I was 14 and I'm like, wow, This is home. And I developed what I call like the non-stage fright, right? I was like, this feels amazing. And that's it, and continued from there. And I was very, very blessed in Israel, and
Well,
less so in LA.
you know what? I will push back on you because,
Oh, come on.
oh, come on. No. You know what? Listen, you know, it's what I do for a living.
I
And
know.
the fact is that, look, Los Angeles is obviously a challenging place. Our business is a challenging, but,
A little bit.
but, and not but, and let's go with and, because but, I'm not supposed to say but, it, honestly, or the truth is, those are negate everything, right?
Yeah.
And you created an industry.
Yeah.
You created an industry. So I would challenge you on that. And you wrote this amazing book.
Thank
So again, we're going to jump around a lot here, folks, because if you don't know Jonathan Baruch, there's no staying in one lane. I like to jump around. But let's talk about, you get on a plane, you come to America. I am curious. You speak flawless English, okay, without any accent. Not easy. Anyone American in your family? I mean, you get on a plane, do you have this accent when you come to America? And talk to me about that.
I did have that accent when I came to
What did
America.
it sound like?
Same as
No,
it is now.
no, the Israeli. If you, when you got on the plane, you never
Never
had
had an Israeli accent.
come on.
No, I can do it. It's no problem. I can do Israeli accent. We can talk about it's no problem. You know, it's very easy for me. You know, all I need to think about is, you know, my father. He talks the thing with the hands. It's not. Here's another. I always joke that this is the one thing I don't have an answer for. Like I have an answer for everything, even if it's like, oh, I don't know. But I, for some reason, as a kid in Israel, picked up on English from TV with like an American accent and all that. So I was already in like elementary school that I was speaking with an American accent, and my friends in school were like making fun of me. But for some reason, I picked it up with a dialect. But I'll tell you what the problem. It's background in singing. Like I used to sing for years, so it's like. But here's where it becomes like really annoying, right? So when I go to like London, within like half an hour, I start talking, like I start imitate, like I imitate whatever it is that I hear. And it's not like, it's kind of involuntarily. So I imitate what it is that I hear. Like when I go to Australia, like I'll start speaking with an Australian accent and my friends are like, really? Like, and I'm, you know, so it kind of, the accent thing is, it's a thing.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
So,
but Israeli accent is adorable and it's so sexy and people love it. So it wasn't like I tried to get rid of it. Like I wasn't, you know.
right.
But I'm going to push back on you on the pushing back on me.
Oh,
like, because I mean, I came to America. I was like a big deal in Israel and did everything I ever dreamt on doing. And then I came to the US and I'm like, I want to go to America. I'm going to challenge myself a little bit. And like,
challenge yourself. I think you did that by writing this book. Yeah. Let's pivot to let's pivot to the book a little bit. Okay. So you wrote this book. What surprises along the way did you learn and did you discover in the writing of this book?
Are you talking about surprise? Because I actually was asked this one time before, and I was like, I paused, and it's two separate answers. There's what surprised me about myself in the process, and then there's what surprised me about what did I find out content-wise.
So let's start with the content,
mm-hmm.
and then we can kind of pivot to maybe what you learned about yourself.
So content-wise, it was disheartening as a liberal to see the level of resistance that the Palestinians have exhibited throughout the years in making a deal.
Mm-hmm.
It was challenging. because I grew up in a liberal family. I mean, in the US, I'm a proud independent, right? I'm like, just give me your values and give me your policies and we'll make a
Right.
decision, right? In terms of social, everything social couldn't be more liberal, obviously, but more staunch on defense and stuff like that. But it was interesting when I went down the actual history, dates, meetings, agreements that were not signed, forks in a road in international affairs, United Nations. Like when I went down, like literally step by step, it's very disheartening how many times the Palestinians have refused a state.
Right. Right.
It was really, and again, as somebody who comes from originally from the left side of the political spectrum and pride myself as like this, liberal gaga, blah, blah, globalist, whatever. I'm like, wow, they've been saying no for
Well,
years.
yeah, look, I
So,
think, listen, that's obviously unfortunate. Again, that's about government as opposed to people,
and I'm
right?
not, of course. And by the way, by saying that, I'm not excusing some of the actions of the Israeli government throughout the years. Like it's not, this book is not a propaganda book. I'm taking it up to the Israeli government and policies as well, because obviously there's no perfect country, right? There's no such thing. But that was to me a little like, ugh, like kind of like a yucky feeling
Right.
to see and to have to acknowledge and address, like really this needs to change.
Right.
So that was,
Go ahead. I'm sorry, no.
yeah, no, that was that in terms of content. And in terms of myself, I was surprised a little bit in how natural this whole thing felt. Meaning I've heard a lot of people throughout the years, and it's in my acknowledgements actually, if when people get to that, that Yair Lapid met me like over 20 years ago, and within half an hour he's like, "You're an author, you're a writer. This is what and I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like it took me that long, but it's and I had a lot of other people in my life that were like, "That's what you do. That's who you are," and it wasn't like I was sitting around for 20 years thinking, "I just need to write a book." Like it didn't even occur. Like I wasn't even thinking about it. I was doing my thing, and then suddenly I had that kind of like aha moment. I need to do this. Got the deal. And sat down to write, and I was shocked by how natural it felt. I felt like I'm home. I'm like, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I'm going to be doing. Of course I'm a writer. Of course I'm an author. Right. So I'm very blessed to be able to have reached that place.
Why do you think, we've got people from all over the world here today. Why do you think people all over the world are so fascinated by Israel?
It's a great question. It's a really great question. What's with the obsession world is actually a subchapter in one of the chapters in my book. Like, what's with the obsession? I'm not sure I have an answer as to why they are obsessed. Like this particular obsession with one state is something of it's curious, right? I don't know why it is, but it is. So I feel like in a way we need to as an Israeli, I'm owning up to it. I don't try to understand why that is. I just know that it is so. And I prefer that this obsession would become something positive rather than something negative. So I'm lighting up why the negative obsession with Israel is around and how it's been created years ago, like around a century ago, before the state of Israel was even created, and through like resolutions in the United Nations that have given this like anti-Israel false sense of legitimacy. So there's a lot of like reasons throughout history as to how we got to this point, but why the particular obsession with one tiny state the size of New Jersey that also happens to be a Jewish state, I don't know.
Right. So when you look at, Israel as a country and her people, what do you think Israel's people, and I'm not going to say the country, but the people's biggest contribution to the world has been?
Wow. Great question. Is this bothering you guys, by the way, this light? Because now
the touch, I mean, it's not bothering me, but I don't, what, see if you can scooch to the right or the left. I'm not quite.
I mean, seriously, because I keep moving and the sun keeps moving too. Maybe I do this.
There you go. That's cool.
Better?
Yeah, a little.
What do I think the people of Israel's greatest contribution is?
or one of? Let's go, because that's
Well, there are a lot. If you love cherry tomatoes, then that's the greatest contribution that Israel had to the world. You know what I mean? There's like a lot. I personally have the worst sense of direction. So to me, the greatest contribution of Israel to the world is ways, no doubt.
right. Yeah, it saved a lot of relationships.
I can't tell you. This is like I literally have I don't have that chip in my brain of the direction. No idea. Again, in terms of the people of Israel as people and as companies have contributed so much. And it's also in my book because I want to create this sense of pride for people and understanding why they need to support Israel, whether they're Jews or non-Jews. And I literally list down like all these like innovations and inventions and companies and all the things that Israel gave to the world from, I just love this stat about like Israel invented the first hair removal product, like electric hair removal. Yeah. I actually remember it as a child. So my mom was the head of the food department at the Israeli Export Center. So she was in charge of all of Israel's export in the food department in various other areas. And it landed on our doorstep, this machine called Epilady in the 80s, which was the first like hair removal thing. And I remember this, my mom was like flipping out going, this is brilliant. And of course, nobody had heard about it at the time. So that's a great contribution. I think that, again, Israel as a country is contributing in terms of defense, in terms of intelligence, in terms of like understanding the Muslim world, in terms of know-how in terrorism, know-how in trauma and hospitalization. The people of Israel, the entrepreneurs of Israel have contributed so much in terms of companies and technology and food and fashion. I mean, fashion, Israeli fashion is killing it right now. And a lot of people they're not even aware that all these, do you know where Israeli designers are now dominating?
No.
Bridal.
Who?
Bridal. Bridal? Weddings?
Wow.
Bridal gowns?
Okay.
Bridal gowns. The top designers of bridal gowns right now are Israeli designers. There's in Baldrol and there's Berta and there's like all these celebrities that are getting married in like Israeli designers wedding dresses, which by the way, I find it a little funny because Israelis are obsessed with weddings.
Yes. Well, I've been to a few and my goodness, it's, yeah, I've been, and literally, obviously, this has been a bit of a challenging time for that. And by the way, to everyone that's out there today, the other thing I want to say is this has been the year of resiliency, and I hope everyone and their families, of course, are safe and healthy. And we're all looking forward shortly to be able to travel, and hopefully we can all travel to Israel. In fact, if I were to travel to Israel tomorrow, how would I find your book over there? Because there are a lot of Americans. Can we get your book in Israel right now?
You can order it on Amazon. It arrives to Israel. I know that. And I can't quite share, but it's hopefully going to be there soon.
Oh, okay. Shh. Okay, there you go. I also know you can obviously order it on Kindle. I have my own copy. I have a Kindle copy. So there you go. Hold that up so people can see it. That's great. By the way, how did you come about the design of it? And I'm curious, the cover. I love
that you asked this. This took a lot of work. When we started designing the cover, Simon & Schuster, I haven't delivered my book yet. So Simon & Schuster hasn't read my book. So all they had was the title, which is Israel and the Guide, a simple guide to the most misunderstood country on earth. So obviously where they went to with it was your obvious, I got the first covers. It was a bunch of Star of Davids. It was like the backdrop of Jerusalem. It was like brown and green and gray. And I'm like, that's not this book. It's not this book. First of all, I didn't want a Star of David on the cover because I didn't want it to be any religious insignia, any religious connotation, because this is a geopolitical, popular, modern take of the country. I don't touch upon religion that much in the book. And my brief to them was like, no. Just think about if like Keith Haring or like Andy Warhol would have created the cover. Like that's what this needs to be. And it actually ended up being an Israeli designer that I convinced to do the cover, and we worked on it together, and Simon & Schuster approved it, and I'm very pleased with it because it says to me what I wanted to say. It's like, or what Bill Maher is saying, right, on the cover. It says, not your bubby's history book.
No, it is not your Bubby's history book. And I have to tell you,
As soon as you pick it up, you see Israel, but you see something else. Like your brain tells you, this is going to be fun. It's not going to be heavy.
I got it for everyone. Again, if you haven't read it, whoever's out there, you got to read it because it's fun. I've read it several times. And again, as I said, with someone, yeah, I did read it before it came out, but that's because,
before it was available.
Yeah, well, that's because I know you. So, but what's been the reaction? Talk to me about the reaction to the book.
Reaction's been great. It's humbling. It's yeah, it's actually, it's really, it's hard to even explain because I get all these like emails and DMs on social media, and people are starting to read it now and they're responding to it. They're really liking it. And to me, the other day, a friend of mine called me up and she said that she went to visit a couple of friends of hers, and they have a kid who just finished high school. They're Jewish, but like secular, not super Jewy. The kid went to public school, so not a Jewish school, and she brought over a copy of my book. Mm-hmm. And she called me up yesterday and she said the mom called her after a week, and she said, "Oh my God, he read the book and he decided now to take a gap year and go to Israel for a year."
Wow.
Yeah. So she said, "I'm having goosebumps." So she said they've been trying to install in him the love of Israel and Zionism and a connection to the Jewish people, and they've been kind of unable to do that. And she's like, this book just changed the trajectory of that kid's life. I'm getting goosebumps again. So that to me is more yeah, that's the reason I did it. That's better than any other, all these little stories that I hear and how I affected people and people's lives and people, how they think of Israel and how they think of themselves and how they think of humanity and the possibility for the Middle East and what they're going to do with their lives, all of that. And just having people be like, "Oh my God."
Listen, and again, I'm not going to ruin it for people who haven't read the book, but there's a story in there where you talk about your why and should you even be here? Okay. Should you even be here today? And I would tell people, you got to read the book, but it gave me goosebumps because you and I have had this conversation, and there was an event that happened, obviously in your life that people read about, but that essentially that brought you here to this world. And the thing is, not only do you deserve to be here, but there was an angel, I believe, somewhere up there that brought you here to be able for you to share this story and to make your contribution to the world. So again, people should read that. I don't want to ruin what's there, but you know what? You and I have had this private conversation, and you know how, anyway, people will see that.
So just so people understand the context, because it seems very cryptic, but we're not going to discuss what it is exactly that Jonathan is referring to, but there's a very tragic event in my family that affected me, and that's what he's referring to. And it comes in the book, it's in the middle of the book in the chapter about the wars, and Jonathan is referring to. So
well, that's all about, again, you and I, resiliency. That's really the adjective that I'm going to use. You have overcome some again, you're up here, you're positive, and which is amazing, but you're resilient, Noah. I mean, you're resilient. So this book, I mean, what do you want to achieve? Like, what do you want to achieve with this book? What is the victory? What is the win for you?
There's no one win, one victory, because what I want to achieve is peace in the Middle East and no anti-Semitism. And that's great. And maybe we'll see it in our lifetime and maybe in our kids' lifetime, but maybe not. Mm-hmm. But that is something, to me, it's a context to live into, as in like, we all have to wake up in the morning. We don't have to, but it's inspiring to wake up in the morning and just know that you moved the ball just a little further, just one step further. And I know that this book can help move the ball forward a little bit when it comes
Talk
to.
about that a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about the book in terms of how it, I guess on a chapter basis, how it moves forward, and in terms of what that looks like. So for those who obviously are going to read it or haven't read it,
Yeah, so it's first of all, it's weaving the story of my family through this. It tells the story of the country through the story of my family. So my family was very involved in the Zionist project. They came to Israel. They helped build the country, as a lot of people did at the time. My grandmother was one of the founders of the first kibbutz in Israel. My great-grandfather, as you said, started the Ministry of Industry and Trade and brought all the Jewish industry to Jerusalem in like the early 20s. And my grandfather was spearheaded the relationship of Israel and Africa. He was literally the first representative that Israel sent to the entire continent of Africa in March of 1956. And the book starts with, chapter 1 is like, who am I, right? Because, the majority of humanity have no idea. So it's like, who am I and why you can trust me with the story, just kind of telling my background in the entertainment industry and also my background in advocacy, and explaining very clearly that this is not like one morning I decided to kind of like, oh, I should write a history book about Israel. What a great idea. Like, I've been working in this field for over a decade. So I have all the background, all the knowledge, all the history, all the facts, everything down. So talking about like my history, and then I go like the history of the land of Israel, because a lot of people don't know what went down there in the last like 3,000 years. And when you talk about future peace agreements, you really have to go to the past, and we don't have to change the past in order to fit some sort of something, some ideal in the future. We need to actually know our facts. So I go to that, and then I talk about Zionism and the origin of Zionism. That I talk about a state is born. So talk about the establishment of the country, and I go to like the wars of Israel, like a chapter which I call a tug of war and peace, which I found very funny when I was like, that's silly. I talk about BDS. I talk about the Arabs, like the Palestinians. I talk about the settlements. It's very important for me to discuss everything that's problematic about Israel, because we should not discuss problematic stuff. So I talk about the settlements. Then I have a chapter about the melting pot, the Israeli population, like who's an Israeli and who is this character? How did that kind of like melt and came to be what it is today? And like the origin, like Jews coming from all over the world, and the Arab population and all of that. Then I have a chapter called Up Nation, which I talk about like the innovation and technology and also charity, and what Israel does in the world in terms of being on the ground in all like disaster areas all over like literally every disaster area in the world. Israel is there, and Israel has been treating like hundreds of thousands of Syrian refugees in the Syrian war in the last 10 years. And it's like things like that people don't know. And then I talk about like, why is this obsession? I go down like the United Nations and BDS, anti-Zionism, and all of that, and kind of try to explain to everybody, kind of like sum it all up, as in like, this is what we know about Israel. How do we get it so wrong? Here's why. And then I talk about why people are like particularly obsessed and what the numbers say and how we can change that. And then I bring it back home with my mom and my son.
Right. You're proud of your homeland, aren't you?
Yeah, I should. It's great.
It is kind of great. So other books, what do we have in the future for you?
I have 3 options. I'm not sure which one of them to go first.
Really? Can you, is that anything you can share, or are we under the cover of secrecy still?
Yeah, because it's not formulated yet, but it was very obvious to me that it's like, oh, I'll be doing this, God willing, for a long time.
When you've been out talking to people, whether it's through this or in terms of in front of people, to the extent that you can be in front of people.
And yet, I haven't seen a single person in a live talk yet. I can't wait to see all of you guys.
Yeah.
Live. Yeah, we haven't seen it. It's not happening yet, but it will soon.
Yeah, no, I think, well, listen, that's soon. I think Israel is opening up May.
No, it's
open.
It's open. It's open.
Well, tourists though,
not for tourists yet. By the way, this light is now becoming like a ball of fire.
Yeah. The angels are chasing you.
I mean, seriously, that's hilarious.
Yeah. Let me ask you a couple of just questions that I think a lot of people want to know. What is it like What's it like being an Israeli in Hollywood? And by the way, do people even know that you're Israeli because they talk to you? I'm curious about that. So, what's it like being an Israeli?
They don't know if I don't tell them. Like if it's not if they don't know me and they don't they don't necessarily know. But I'm different in attitude. So a lot of people actually ask me if I'm from New York and have asked me throughout the years, "Are you a New Yorker?" And I'm like, "No, but like, yeah, I get why you asked that." Yeah, what's it like being an Israeli anywhere? You know, it's it took me a minute to, people were commenting at the beginning about like my way of being a friend, right? So I moved to the States. My first kind of group of people were actually Australian for some reason. I had an Australian boyfriend, long story. And I met a bunch of Australians and we'd hang out, and Australians are not dissimilar to Israelis, but Israelis still are like, I'm like, yeah, come on over. Let me make you a salad. Let me do a, get in the fridge. I think this like familiarity that, took my friends a second to get on board with. So I think that's what one of the main differences. But hey, listen, one of the things I'm most proud of in my life is my friends and the people that I have around me. So
great friends.
Very, very lucky, very blessed.
Yeah. Have you, having read the book, have you thought about the idea of almost doing like a tour of Israel based on your book?
Oh,
I literally just thought of this right now. Wouldn't that be kind of fun?
I mean, that'd be awesome. Listen, the book needs to, like, people need to want it, but like, that's a pretty good idea because you go through everywhere.
You do.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
So, well, I mean, what do you? So, can you? I got a question here, actually, that someone asked, which I think is a really fun one. Can you provide a few examples how Israel is misunderstood?
How much time do we have? So I've seen a change in the how what I haven't seen a change in throughout the years is how the particular obsession that people have about Israel. They've always been obsessed about Israel in comparison to its size and significance in the world in that context, right? But it was, whereas before, when I first started coming here, it was very much like people not realizing how modern Israel is. And they literally kind of thought that like the cliches, like I talk about this in chapter 1. I tell about this girl who came up to me and asked me from Israel, and how did my family feel about me that I'm not wearing like a hijab, right? So that is not so much like that. So it used to be about like how modern Israel and open society and like protection of like minorities and LGBTQ rights and all of that. And now it's a lot more severe, actually, because now you hear in certain circles Israel as an apartheid state. And I think that borderline slander. Because if you don't know, the majority of these people that say stuff like that, they don't know the differentiate between the PA and Hamas. And if you don't, I say, get off of Twitter. So don't have these like broad kind of generalized kind of lines if you actually don't know your facts. Because the truth of the matter is there's a situation in the West Bank, and we can discuss and should discuss the West Bank and what's going to happen in the West Bank, and more particularly, why is the West Bank not Palestine yet? That's number one. That's one question. But in terms of Israel itself, the Arab population in Israel, which is about 21%, has equal rights to everybody else. Like literally, Israel is the only country in the world, in the region, which grants freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of everything to all its citizens. The only country where you could practice any religion as you wish. So to me, in terms of misunderstanding, saying that Israel is an apartheid state, it's like, it's intellectual half measure, it's borderline like slander. It's crazy. So these are just like two examples that I felt like, I mean, there's another, I mean, people try to like disconnect the connections, the indigenous connections of Jews to the land, which also defines logic. When you, even if you're not a believer in the Bible, any kind of Bible, that's fine. There's like history writing, there's archaeology findings, there's like, it defies logic to try and say that. So stuff like that.
Right. Another question. I'm just going to go through some of these here from people. And by the way, thank you, Evan, for the questions. I know that lots of questions. We can't answer them all, but we're trying to, some selected ones. Here's a great, if you were offered a position with the Israeli consulate, would you take it? Ambassador Tishby.
We will discuss if and when the time is right.
Okay, well, I would certainly support, I would support that.
Great.
Okay, we got another one over here. Okay, this is a fun one. What is your favorite Israeli food?
Oh, that is virtually almost impossible to answer. Okay. I happen to have, no, I don't have, we actually talked about it before, but it's not like my favorite, but it's like one of my favorite. I don't work for them, but Bamba is the reason why there's hardly any peanut allergy with children in Israel. I'm sure almost all of you know this. It's true, by the way. Peanut allergy is very low in Israel because of that. I love Bamba. I love the cow chocolate, you know, the elite, the red, simple.
Oh, yummy.
Oh, and of course, and hummus and masabacha there. Like, how can you?
Okay, that's a great, you know what?
Restaurant with the pita and all the stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, I love food. I love food, generally.
Talk about hummus, and I know that, but hummus is, there's a chapter in your book where you talk specifically about how food has brought together the Arabs and the Jews. True?
It's not just that it's true. It's so true that it's almost like it's redundancy to say it when you're in Israel. Like it's not even it's one of those things that felt so bizarre writing it, because when you go to Israel, which again, I'm sure a lot of us have been, and you see the coexistence and you see the restaurants that are owned by Arabs or Jews or this or that, and they're sitting together and eating and thinking, nobody's blinking an eye. Like it's not, and it's another, because I'm so kind of versed in both cultures, I know that for Americans, they don't realize that there is no war on the ground happening within Israel between the Arab Palestinians and the Jews and the thing, and everybody just kind of like live together and sitting around like menagvim pita im hummus, like just having fun. So I had to put that little vignette in, even though it seemed redundant to me as an Israeli, because I knew that the majority of Americans don't have access to that on a daily basis.
Right. And for those of us,
now I want to eat more Bamba. It's terrible.
Yeah, well, that's
Christine, what's my favorite Israeli TV show today and why?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask that. Yes, please.
Okay. There's a show that didn't make it to the US yet. The Light is insane.
Actually, it makes you look fantastic. You're angelic, okay? So just get over it.
Okay, great. I hope it's not bothering anybody.
Are you sweating? Is it making you?
No, not at all.
I'm cold because, by the way, both my fires are now out and I'm freezing. I mean, I was going to toast marshmallows while you were eating your Bamba, but there's no fire anymore.
I'm going to be eating Bamba. I feel so wrong. Okay. There's an Israeli show called Chazarot, which is rehearsals. Have you heard of it, Jonathan? Have you seen it yet?
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
I have not seen it yet.
Oh my God. So it hasn't, for some reason, it hasn't sold to Netflix yet. I don't know why. I think they're discussing it. They're talking about it. It's one of these shows that I wouldn't touch it. I wouldn't make an adaptation. I would just air it like that. It's such a perfect product. It's incredible. So very small story, no high concept, nothing. It's about a couple who are theater writers. She's a writer and he's a director, and they're breaking up as their play is accepted to like the National Theater. And it's about their relationship on the backdrop of and the play that they've written is about themselves. So they've written a play about themselves. They're about to put it on stage and they are breaking up. And the show is about the play happening on stage and their relationship as it unfolds. Very small, so well written, so well acted. When I was in Israel in December, me and my sister basically devoured it within like, a few days. And my brother-in-law was like a ex-IDF fighter pilot, and he's like this macho guy's like, why would I want to see a show about a relationship? And I'm like, just watch it. And he started watching. He's like, pretty good, pretty good, amazing. So I highly recommend it. I have no idea how you can watch it here.
Is it Keshet, Reshet, Mach? I mean, what? Hot.
No, that's Khan. It's Khan 11.
Khan. So you could, for those of you who don't know, you can actually download on your, whether it's your iPhone, your iPad, you can download the application because that's where I watch.
Right, but you speak Hebrew.
I do, yes.
And people, if you don't speak Hebrew, I don't think it's translated yet to English.
Okay, well then I don't know what to say.
But if you speak Hebrew, watch the show.
Noah, you love Israel, that's clear, but you live in Los Angeles. You live in America. You plan on, what's that look like?
What the heck? What? Why?
Why?
I do love Israel. Again, this is crazy.
Don't worry about it. Alti agi.
It's all good. So here's the thing. Before COVID, I actually have been legitimately like divided my time. And I know that I was able to get best of both worlds. Like I would go to Israel every 4 months, 3 months, sometimes less. I would like leave Israel and my sister was like, oh, when are you coming back? Yeah, I'm like 2 months. Okay, great. Yeah, we'll see you again. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't a big deal. It was a back and forth all the time. I've been very blessed to be able to work here and there. And I've been able to create this bridge between the two countries, which I think is very useful. And it's almost like I'm more useful to Israel from here in a way. And I also love America. So I love being based here and going back there a lot and creating this bi-pollination of content, ideas, people. I think it's again, it's the best of both worlds.
What's next in terms of your journey as a producer? Is that something, I know that In Treatment is going to be going again. How are you approaching producing? How are you looking at Israeli shows? I mean, where are you in that part of your journey?
I'm actually not looking at Israeli shows anymore because I've been so focused on the book and on other stuff that the market is so well saturated. It's fantastic. But I do have one film project, which I will tell you about it when we're off the Zoom.
Anything obviously to support you. When you look at what's the shows that have been brought to the States and you look at really, you started that, I mean, how does that make you feel?
I'm sorry, can you say that again? I was looking for questions actually.
So the idea that you have brought In Treatment, you were the first, and now you've created an industry out of something that you you brought something to the States.
Yeah.
Look now at what's happened. There's whole conferences about this now.
Yeah.
When you kind of pull yourself back and go, what do you think? Like, how does that make you feel?
I think it's amazing. It's been something that I've been thinking about in the past few years because I think it's incredible. Look, in the challenging you again, like I've been through so many failures, like epic failures in my life, in my professional career. But like being able to do that, to open that door and see what happens is extraordinary. And I have a lot of friends who their lives have changed because of that. The industry, both in the US and in Israel, have changed. So many people made a lot of money, like GDP grew, like the relationship between Hollywood and Israel have never been so powerful because of economic incentives and possibilities. And it's amazing. And I think that when you watch a show like In Treatment as a viewer, you don't know that it's from Israel and you don't care and you shouldn't care, right? But when you watch Fauda and Shtisel and all these shows, you really get a sense of the Israeli people. And that is something that can make a huge difference. It feels amazing. I look at it like, it just feels amazing because I remember the moment that I came up with the idea of doing that, of selling format. I was like, wait, that's an Israeli format. I've been on a British format, so they've adapted format from other countries to the US, so it's doable. They just haven't done it in this language. Oh my God, this show is international. I need to do this. And I had that moment this aha moment in which it was so unheard of. There wasn't even a remake clause in the contracts in Israel. It was that unheard of. Like nobody even thought about that, to address it in a contract and to see
Right?
what's.
I want to tell you something. No one thought ever until you did this about formats. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at formats, that was something. What after in treatment, it was like Shazam.
Yeah.
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 I think. How long do we have? An hour, right? Is that what we have?
Oh, we're almost done. Oh my God.
So I want to just kind of wrap this up. First, I want to say thank you. Really, thank you for your contribution. I want to leave on this. Tell us, just what do you want from? You've written this book. What do you want people to get from your book? And if there was something that you had to crystallize as you move forward, and how can all of us be ambassadors like you on behalf of Israel? Essentially, how you influence us.
Well, first of all, I've written the book. I always said about the book that this is not a book, it's a community project. So I've written the book, obviously for myself. I enjoyed it. I loved it. It's my book, but it's for the community. Like this book has no life unless all of us read it and get all that information. And I think that's the access to being a quote unquote ambassador, because not everybody has to be an ambassador on behalf of anyone or anything. But if you read this book, you get all the information you need and all the knowledge you need and all the facts that you need in order to answer problematic questions and figure out why it is that it's important for Israel to be safe, secure, and around. And it's not just for Jews; it's for Jews and non-Jews alike. Because it's literally, if you're a person who likes democracy, freedom of speech, human rights, women's rights, LGBTQ plus rights, you need to support Israel within the context of the Middle East. Like you really do. And this book gives you everything you need to know, and everything you want to know, and have any conversations you will encounter along the way.
Yeah, look, I just have to say, um, this book also has brought us closer together, and I appreciate that. I know that all of us at Israel 21C really appreciate that you wrote this, because not only has it brought us, closer, but you've created really a lifetime relationship with our organization, and so we are forever grateful for that. And I just, on behalf of all of us at Israel 21C and everyone that's here today and all these wonderful questions, you know what? Toda, toda, toda.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. I really appreciate it.
So everyone, thank you so much. Be safe. Please, again, you can order the book on Amazon. I think Nikki, our editor-in-chief from Israel 21C, put a link in. You can get it on Kindle. And it's really a great book, also not just for you, but share it, because after you share it, I'm telling you, it'll be pretty awesome, the reaction you get. Thank you, Noah. And I'll talk to you in a little bit.
Yes, beautiful. Call me.
Ciao. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.